So, bienvenidos and welcome to our last LHC membership webinar program of 2025. It's incredible to think that we hosted our first program in December of 2023, and we are excited to continue providing a space for important conversations on Latinx heritage conservation. Today's presentation is titled Interviewing Nuestra Comunidad Oral History Projects. We're coming to you here on Zoom Live, and our panelists include Monique Davila from the Utah Historical Society and Jen Moran from Latinos and Heritage Conservation. Before we get started, just wanted to say a few words about membership webinars, today's recording as well. LHC members do receive live access to webinars, so thank you all for being here today, where you can ask our presenters questions directly as well as receive early access to recordings. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted publicly on our website a week from today. Visit our website to see all of our past recordings, and we're happy to announce that you can also now visit and subscribe to our Latinos and Heritage Conservation YouTube channel and find playlists featuring all of our past recordings from all of our different programs as well. Also, don't forget to save the date for Congreso 2026. This will be hosted in Chicago, Illinois at the historic Palmer House. Registration opens in early 2026, and we offer different sponsor levels and benefits for anyone looking to support. And for those of you who may be watching the presentation, the recording, and are not members, we invite you to join LHC. Our new membership levels include yearly and monthly payment plans, all types of benefits, including our members-only quarterly newsletter, live access to membership webinars like this one today, and our monthly cafecitos con LHC. Like we mentioned, you get live access to all of these programs. And we also have, at the higher level, our community supported membership, which includes all those benefits plus extra La Plaza logins, webinar attendees, custom presentations for your org, and even speaking opportunities at Congreso. These are great giving levels for corporations and organizations. So please consider a donation and help us continue this important work. Que vale la pena. If you're already a member, thank you for your continued support. We appreciate you spreading the word about LHC and the amazing things we do together. So I will be introducing our panelists. Today we have Monique Davila. Monique will be starting our presentation today, and she is a community engagement coordinator at the Utah Historical Society. Originally from Tucson, Arizona, she earned her master's degree in history from Utah State University, where she worked on archival projects and curated digital exhibits. At the Historical Society, Monique leads the Peoples of Utah Revisited initiative, partnering with community organizations to broaden Utah's historical narrative through oral history, digital archiving, and preservation. She lives in Ogden, Utah with her partner and 3 elderly dogs. Oh. Also, we have Jennifer Moran, who is the public historian at Latinos and Heritage Conservation, where she leads community-centered research, oral history, and archival initiatives focused on preserving and uplifting Latinx heritage. She is a PhD candidate in history at Washington State University, specializing in Chicana feminist historiography and decolonial methodologies. Her work bridges public history, digital humanities, and historic preservation through memory mapping, intergenerational storytelling, and community-driven archives. So, with our great presenters, we are ready to have an amazing conversation today. For any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll have a Q&A towards the top of the hour, and I'll pass the floor over to Monique.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Yes, thank you everyone for being here and inviting me to share the work that we've done here at the Utah Historical Society, especially with oral history. I am going, so I forgot to check, Renee, earlier. Can you see just the slides, or do you see the presenter thing also?
We just see the slides. We do see the top bar of your
Okay,
browser.
which I think is fine, but I have
Yeah.
presenter notes, so I just want to make sure you're not seeing my presenter notes either. Okay, good. Okay, great. Let me minimize this. So, yes, thank you, everyone. I know Renee mentioned my title, but it just recently changed. So, I am Monique Davila. I am now the Local History Services Coordinator, which is in a sense is still community engagement, but I do a lot more training, and I basically share history, how to do history with communities who are interested in doing historical projects, whether that be exhibits, writing, oral history, and so on. So I still really lean into my oral history in this role, which is really great because I've enjoyed it and I love it. And hopefully you'll see that in this presentation. And I know Renee introduced me. Thank you so much. I'm proud of being born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. I love it, but I also love where I live now, which is Ogden, Utah. And I've been here for over 5 years. Um, and I first want to um, share that. So, yes, I'm sorry. So, this is about oral history, but I do kind of want to tell you how it got started. So, I am going to veer off of oral history for a bit to talk about the Peoples of Utah Revisited, which Renee did mention that I help oversee. So in May 2022, I was hired as the community engagement coordinator to help spearhead this project, which is the Peoples of Utah Revisited. You can see the bullet points, why we're doing it. It also, too, it was we started this project at the Utah Historical Society as part of the America 250 initiative, which is going on right now, the celebration of America's birthday, 250th. And as Utah was in a state back then, we were actually part of Mexico in 1776. How do we celebrate that? So we thought of doing this big initiative, which is helps to widen the lens on Utah's history, preserve and share all of Utah's stories through digital exhibits, digital preservation and oral history. And then it also helps us to connect with communities that we haven't connected with before. And that's where my work really comes in. And so some of the main part of connecting with communities was through something we've called scan and share events. These are not new. I did meet with many people who have done this, including Queens Memory Project is a really big one, and they still are doing amazing work up in Queens, New York. I suggest you all give them a follow. They do a lot of community history work. There was a person in Colorado History Museum and local folks as well up in Utah State University helped me really build the framework for this. So scan and share events are basically where we partner with communities throughout Utah to preserve and share their history. A big part of that was digitizing their historical materials. Um, and they kept the originals. You can see in this picture here, one of my previous colleagues, Chase, was helping someone who we've partnered with a Cambodian Buddhist temple in the Salt Lake Valley area. And he was helping this lady comb through some of the pictures that she ended up letting us digitize. The great thing about this is it really added things into the Historical Society's collection, but also in Utah's history in general, just new and untold stories that are not known here. For instance, the Cambodian Buddhist temple, there is a really big community here of Cambodians that came to Utah as refugees to flee civil war in Cambodia within the 1970s and 80s. And before we partnered with them, we had seriously nothing on their history in our society. So partnering with them has really helped to tell their story, but also continue partnerships where we have helped them host other events, preservation, oral history, and so on. From January 2023 to February 2025, we've done 36 of these. We have 142 people donate to us, which includes their digital items, but also oral history interviews. And we've collected over 1,000 items that are now that are all digital. They keep the originals, but they're all digitally on our online collection, which I can share later in the chat. Um, one of Sorry, and then also I mentioned I was veering off of oral history for a bit, but because this is Latino heritage and conservation, I wanted to also share some of the history and the communities that we've partnered with that are of Latino descent. So the first Scan and Share event that we ever did was in January 2023, was with the Genealogical Society of Hispanic America Utah chapter. I know there's one in New Mexico and one in California. Um, and they're very um, they're an amazing group of people, but they're very active here in Utah. Um, in the picture to the left, you see me and most of my the staff that work on these. But to the left, on top of me, is Dr. Ed Munoz. He is the one who helped put this together, and he has been the president, vice president of this group. He's still part of the GSHA group, but he is the one who reached out to our director, Jennifer Ortiz, and said he wants to be a part of this. How can he? And um, we did it with them. We had over 7 participants join. The picture to the left, you can see Margie Delgado, who is the one to the far left. Holding, she is showing a scrapbook that she created on the Chicano movement here in Utah, which is amazing. I think a lot of times, when we think of the Chicano movement, we think of the bigger cities. Um, and although Salt Lake City is kind of big, we don't think of that here. So it was amazing too to add this into our online archive. We scanned over 100 pages, so the whole entire scrapbook, and it is seriously our first um, archive historical item that talks about the Chicano movement locally. So that was an amazing in itself. And again, it's live, it's public, you can view it on our website. Um, but with this whole um, partnership, Dr. Ed Munoz was very intrigued by this, and he wanted to know how can he do more, especially to preserve our Latino heritage in Utah. And so he also, back note, he is a professor in sociology and ethics and ethnic studies at University of Utah in Salt Lake City. He has already done an oral history project before with the GSHA members. A lot of them are from New Mexico or have family ties in New Mexico. And so we wanted to did a lot of oral histories about that and their connection to Utah and why they came and just being Mexican American, Latino in Utah and so on. So because of his background and his, commitment to really continue preserving Utah's Latino culture communities. We helped him by funding him to do a oral history project. Um, he was himself and 2 interns. He did 15 Zoom interviews on Latinos of Latinos in Utah, but it was amazing. The oral histories that he captured. I'm going to share two right now. One of them is by Fanny Blar, but he interviewed people Puerto Rican descent, Mexican, El Salvadorian. One lady is Japanese and half Mexican, and her oral history is amazing because she talks about how I'm sure a lot of us sometimes feel is, you know, we're too much of this, we're too much of that, we're not enough of this, we're not enough of that. So his oral history is really shared like just so many different experiences, and obviously showing that we are not just one, we're not a monolith. We have so many backgrounds, ideas, why we came here, the religions we practice, genders, and so on. So I will share one with you right now. Just a little background. Fanny Blauer she uh, just stepped away from this, but she was the director of Artes in Mexico and Utah, which is a really big um, well-respected art organization in Utah that obviously gives platforms to people of Latinos who are doing um, art in Utah, whether it be poetry, painting, sculptures, and so on. And so Fanny talks about her life and how she met her husband and how they moved to Utah and that experience. So I'm going to play just a little bit of a minute of her interview. You.
Then we moved to Hawaii. My husband works for the federal government, so we moved to Hawaii, and then we moved to Utah. He's originally from Utah, so he always wanted to come back. And when I came to Utah for the first time back in 1996, I absolutely loved it. The mountains, particularly, it's what one day I said I think I would like to live there. So yes,
Mhm.
I have lived in Utah for most of my life here in the United States.
Okay. So, and Mexico City's in the mountains también, right? Or no?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
it's a city surrounded by mountains. It's a high elevation. It's a valley, very similar actually to Salt Lake City in terms of what the Mexico City used to be a lake.
Uh-huh.
Now we're
Wow.
predicting that the same is going to happen to Salt Lake
Right.
City.
Uh-huh.
The lake is.
Okay.
I just wanted to share a little bit of what Fanny said. So Fanny moved to Utah in 1998 with her husband. They have two kids. They now live in Mill Creek, which is like what do you call it? Like a town next to Salt Lake. So it's still in the Salt Lake Valley, but it's a town in itself next to Salt Lake. She's done, as I mentioned, amazing work here in Utah, especially to bring a lot of like traditional um, I guess things that we do in like a Mexican culture. She's really done a lot with our Wasatch Community Gardens, where she does a yearly um, thing. I'm blanking, but where she helps to grow corn, beans, and squash and so on. And she does a lot of things around that, including very traditional uh, ways in how that was cultivated and so on. Um, I think oh yeah, so let me move on to the next one. So that this is another oral history interview that Dr. Ed Munoz did. It's from Alfonso Flores. Another thing too, we really tried to make sure because Utah is so big, but 70% of our population is in this area called the Wasatch Front, which is Salt Lake, Ogden, Provo. Um, but so because of that, we wanted to make sure that we try and capture people from the more rural areas or outside of those areas. So Alfonso is from Mexico. He was born in El Museo, Mexico, but he moved to Heber Valley or Park City, which is on the Wasatch Back, so on the other side of the mountains, which is away from the larger population. So that was something we wanted to do also, is just make sure that we're capturing, voices from other parts of Utah, not just in the most populated areas. So let me play this one for you.
And you mentioned that you always wanted to make a difference. Okay. What do you think you got that kind of attitude? Or,
I think my upbringing. I mean, I am an insurance agent, but also I'm a court interpreter. My neighbor is when I live in the place, the neighbor was a judge of Heber, and he saw me interpreting at church, and he says, "Hey, we need an interpreter because we don't have good interpreters in Heber."
mm-hmm,
So I went through the certification and all that, and I became a court interpreter. And I realized that there's a lot of people they need more than interpreting.
mm-hmm,
There's so I have become involved in many things. Like we created a few years back the Wasatch Latino Coalition here.
okay,
One of the founders. And they invited. It was not me. It was a group of people that we got together and says like, why don't we do a coalition so we can connect resources to the people that need them. And then since then I became part of the Rotary Club. Somebody invited me. They invited me to also to be part of the community board from the hospitals here in Heber.
hmm,
They have a group of people, they oversee the things that happen in the hospital and give opinions or
mm-hmm.
recommendations of what services are needed. So I am involved with the schools and my kids, and I mean maybe that's why I'm poor, because half of the things I do they don't give me.
Okay.
Oh, so that was Alfonso Flores. I love that part because he talks about, who inspired him, his work, and why he's continuing his work in Heber Valley. Um, So Alfonso was born in Hermosillo. He was raised in Chihuahua. Him and his family came to Utah to for better jobs and school opportunities. He did stay in Mexico to finish his studies, but came in 1998 at the age of 25. He has worked in Salt Lake, Park City, and Heber Valley. Um, Again, as he mentioned there, he supports the Latino community through his business, Florence Agency, which is Alfonso Flores Insurance. Um, the next slides are some of the images that we've collected from our scan and share events, as I've mentioned. Um, these are just amazing photos. The one to the right we use often with little boy. His name's Albert Martinez. He is no longer a little boy. He's an older man now. But this picture to the right, he is in front of a car in Lark, Utah, which no longer exists. It is completely demolished and covered by a mines. So Lark, Utah, along with some smaller towns, is located to the west of Salt Lake Valley, kind of in a mountainous area. It was a mining area owned by Kennecott Copper Mining. I believe that's their name now. But a lot of families, is Italian, uh, Japanese, Puerto Ricans in the 1940s, and also Mexicans came to get jobs. And so a lot of them lived in these company towns. And so Lark, Utah was one of those. And there's an oral history that Albert did with Dr. Ed Munoz as well. And he talks a lot about that and the difference and, just the difference in towns, how more Mexicans lived on this side of town and so on, how things were divided and traveling into Salt Lake to get goods and so on. But I wanted to share this because I think when people think of Utah, I know I did when I was before I even knew, Utah or that I was going to come here for school. But a lot of times when people think of Utah history, they think of Mormon pioneers who came to the area in 1847 to find religious freedom. Um, Brigham Young declared that this is the place in Salt Lake City. He recruited many families, especially from Europe, to settle through Utah and establish towns. Um, and although Mormons helped to develop Utah, they were obviously not the first, nor were they the only ones to help build Utah. It's known, but let me say, that Utah is home to our Goshute, Paiute, Ute, and Shoshone and Navajo peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial, but also beyond our indigenous communities. Many people, especially Utahns, don't know that Mexicans and Latinos were part of Utah's cultural fabric long before it became a state in 1896. And obviously, as I mentioned before, in 1776, when the Declaration was signed, Utah was not a state. We were also part of Mexico for a brief moment. And so, we have been part of Utah history for a long time. But again, I think many people don't realize that. And so getting these stories, these oral histories, these scan and share photos have really helped to kind of prove, or shape, hopefully shape our what we think of as Utah history. A lot, especially within the early 1900s, a lot of Mexicans ended up migrating up to Utah to seek job opportunities, better education, better living conditions, and so on. Today, the Latino population is Utah's largest minority group, comprising roughly of 17% of the state's total population, which is the largest group within this is Mexican Americans. So one, yeah, so which is the largest is the Mexican Americans here in Utah. And then two, just give a little background on this picture to your left with the little girl. Little girl is Gloria Gonzalez Cook. She's also part of GSHA and her mother. She was born in California, lived there probably for a couple months, and she moved to Salt Lake, where she has been living since she did live in New York for a while. But she is with her mother here in Liberty Park, which is a really huge park, still significant today in Salt Lake City. Um, so yeah, and these were both taken in 1951. I love to share this one too because we didn't only just want older pictures, we also wanted to make sure that we get contemporary history. Um, we love this one, and I didn't mention, but we are in the process. The Utah Historical Society is of building a museum of Utah, which is going to be Utah's first history museum. And what I mean by that, it's the first history museum in Utah that will attempt to tell the whole story, not just Mormon pioneers, not just local history, but really the state's history. And so this picture to the left, are in love with it. We're going to use it in the museum and part of an exhibit. But this is oh my gosh, I'm blanking her name, but this is Dr. Ed Munoz's daughter, his youngest daughter. She had a quince in 2023, and he donated a few of her photos to be part of our Peoples of Utah collection. And so I just love this one. And then this one to the right is Albert Martinez, who I mentioned as a little boy in the picture before. His mother received an award for her for being giving for I'm blanking on the award, but I just love that this was in the 1990s, how this shows her being recognized by the governor of Utah at the time. The last one of this images is just to show how I mentioned previously that Latinos have been part of Utah's history for a long time. This postcard was shared with us at a Scan and Share event, and it's amazing because I was able to put two and one together. So let me explain this. So this card is a postcard, photo postcard. These were famous back in the day to kind of a two in one. So here's a postcard of writing in the back and a photo in the front. And this was written by Mercedes Castreon in Brigham City, Utah, which is probably an hour north of Salt Lake City. She had moved there with her family, and the little boy in the picture, is the connection to Utah. He had 9 children, lived in Ogden, and his great grandchild is the one who brought the picture to an event. But what I mean by this, so this was by the history of Utah. So this was this was taken in 1926. But the reason that this family moved to Utah was because they were recruited to work in a sugar beet plantation, sugar beet industry in the fields in Garland, Utah. And I found a Salt Lake Tribune article that notes this and how many people from Mexico were recruited to work in this area. And in Garland, Utah, which is adjacent from Brigham City, they created their own town, their own place to really bring their culture to Utah and to their family. So I just love this connection too, to show, that that the Mexican Latino history has been in Utah for a long time. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the oral history program that I helped revitalize in August 2023 as part of the People's Initiative, as I mentioned earlier. We did do oral history a bit at the Utah Historical Society, but the person who was running it before left, and so it was kind of at a standstill for a while. So we wanted to bring it back to, again, bring more community history into our own organization, but the Peoples of Utah Revisited Initiative. This helped add an oral history component to Scan and Share events. So aside from asking folks to bring their stuff so we can digitally scan, we also did some oral history interviews there. it also helped us to hire 2 interns last year to do 2 oral history projects of communities that are not widely known, or their history is not widely known in Utah. One of them is women authors in Utah. I had no idea before this, but we have one of the largest communities of women authors that live here and right here. We also have one of the biggest Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population in Utah. West Valley City, which is again another town adjacent to Salt Lake. They are the largest population of Tongans outside of Tonga. So that was an amazing project. Our intern, who is of Samoan and Tongan descent, she interviewed over 30 people. That's still being worked on. Both are being worked on, so they're not live yet. They're in the transcription phase. But aside from that, that really helped bring to light, new and untold stories. The oral history program also offers many other things. The main thing that has been a real draw and I think help to a lot of folks is our oral history training, which is free and it's almost always virtual. It started in 2023 as well, but our introduction to oral history training, all about transcription, and our one that's going to be featured in this coming up year is using oral history beyond the interview. So how to add oral history to writing, to exhibits, walking tours, and so on. We also have an oral history toolkit, which is very much similar to the introduction to oral history training. We are in the process of creating, but we'll by next year be offering equipment loans. So folks who want to do their own oral histories can borrow equipment. We also have oral history database, which features oral history interviews from all over Utah that you can quickly find and hopefully be able to hear or at least go to that place and hear it. Mentorship, and then we also offer grants and partnerships with Utah Humanities. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the local impact of our oral history grants. So since August 2023, we have reached we have funded 18 projects. The map to the left shows Utah, so the little red dots are places where grants have been funded. Again, trying to make sure that we are not just preserving or giving funding to the main hub of Salt Lake. We want to make sure that we're reaching rural communities or communities outside of the main area as well. Subjects of these grants include music, veterans, Mormon Trail, which is not just in Utah. They've also done oral histories all the way up to Missouri. Latter-day Saint historians, local leaders, population growth, and then communities include Japanese Americans, our Kurdish community, indigenous communities in rural Utahns, and more. The oral history training has been really fun for me. I've been doing it now. This will be my 3rd year coming up doing these trainings. They have really started out with a statewide reach, but now it's also nationwide. And a huge thanks to LHC and also Renee for sharing those in your newsletters and emails and such. We've reached people from Washington, D.C., obviously Texas, Ohio, California, Indiana, and so done 22 training sessions from fall 2023 to now. Over 260 people registered, but we've had 260 people actually participate and go to these events. The most awesome thing about doing these trainings is I do them with communities who want to do oral history but don't have training. So they're like, hey, can you do a training with my class or with my museum colleagues? And so I have. And this picture shows here, this was one of my favorites. Harriman, which is again another town adjacent to the west of Salt Lake, their population has grown tremendously from 13,000 to over 60,000 in the past 10 years. A lot of that has been Latinos who have come and made Harriman their home. And so they started this project where they are asking local high school kids of Harriman to interview their neighbors, their friends, their community members. And so I did a training with high school kids in September. So this was really fun. And they're in the middle of their project right now, and they also received a grant. I'm really running out, I'm out of time, but I did just want to share one thing with you all. I think this really goes to show with conservation, especially what LHC does, conserving buildings, preserving buildings and historical sites and so on of a Latino population. But this was one we did for the Nettie Gregory Center. It's a community center, very small. You'd miss it. Most people don't know where it is either because it's so small and it's kind of tucked away. Um, but it was built took 20 years to build. It opened in 1967, and it was built by and for the Black community of Utah. It was really important for them to have their own space, for them to feel included, but it also was a space for the local west side of Salt Lake, which is mostly people of color as well, and a lot of youth and kids lived in that area. So from 1967 to early 2000s, it was used as a place to socialize, gather events, but also in the later 90s to 2000s, more of an after-school program. To the right is a picture of the building being built in 1961. To the left is a picture of the event we did with some of the people who have used the Nettie Gregory Center. Miss Nettie is pictured in the middle. She unfortunately passed before the building was built. Building opened, but she was the main contributor to getting funding, getting people to help with the building, and so on. And that's why the building is named after her. To the right is Karina. She was an after-school program who helped and did a lot of stuff at the Nettie Gregory Center. To the left is Abdi. He was a student and would go to this center that Karina helped him discover. And so they've held this really long friendship since then. He's now a university student. Anyways, the reason we did this event in September 2023, 24, is because the building unfortunately was in not disrepair, but it was just not up to code anymore. It needed a lot of work. And so they wanted to gather fundings and apply for the National Register of Historic Places to help with funding. And so there's not a lot of history on this building. There's some on Miss Nettie, but not on the building. So we partnered with them and our state historic preservation office to do this event to gather historical materials. So in this event space, we did 15 oral history interviews in a span of 4 hours. It was amazing. And we scanned some photos. But anyways, I just want to share this with you. I think it's beautiful because it really helps to show how we can work together to help preserve history and bring history to light. Letting you know, they received the National Register of Historic Places in July of this year. So through a partnership and through teamwork and through all of this, they were able to get that recognition. So let me just play this with you. I know it's a little long, but I love it and I hope you love it too.
Such a lively time. Can you describe anything about your feelings about the building or the gathering space?
It was beautiful. One, because outside of the churches, we didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
I mean, Central City, the community center, and even though they had diverse staff there, it was a sense of home and a sense of community. But this was something, this is ours. And so the pride that came along when you walked in the door, like, this is our place. You know, we belong here. We didn't have to, it's like, pretend or put on that mask. Okay, we got to go in here. How are we going to act? How are we looking? How are we do all of these things that go along into entering other spaces? We just come in and let your hair down. Be respectful, because our elders, and at the time I was a young person, now I'm the elder, but you know, that respect and all of that, that was top of line. You know, that was the expectation, and we all knew it.
Yeah.
But at least you could still let your hair down and be at home and be relaxed, and knowing that you weren't being judged by everything you said or what you look like and all of that. So it's just like being with family, being like, I call it that home away from home, when you stepped in this space. So
I love hearing that.
Yeah, Betty Sawyer is a very prominent woman here in Utah, especially in Ogden, where I live. She's the president of NAACP. She helps run other organizations for youth, and she's a really big proponent for a community center here. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that. I think it's beautiful, and I'm so glad that we were able to help them get on the National Register of Historic Places and hopefully start rebuilding so they can open up to the community. I just wanted to end. This is my oral history training schedule. The links probably don't work on here. They don't, but I can send this. I'll send it to Renee and hopefully he can share it with you all, but also in your newsletters, you can share with other members. Um, but yeah, that's that. And I want to thank you. Thank you for letting me go over time. I appreciate it. And I think I'll answer questions after.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for a great presentation and just all the work that you do with all the different communities in Utah. Obviously, you and your staff and the folks you work with are super dedicated, doing amazing stuff. And yeah, welcome you to pop any links in the chat. We'll do
Yes.
a
Okay, I'll
Q&A
do
in a
that.
little bit, and we'll give Jen the floor to talk a little about LHC's program. But we have time, so we can go over the hour if we need to and get into questions. Thank you again, Monique.
Hi, everyone. And I want to thank you again for being here today. I'm really grateful to be in conversation with you all, especially about a project that is near and dear to my heart. I'm just going to share really quick the Abuelas Project so that you all can see what it is that I'm talking about here with memory mapping and oral history. And I've also dropped I will drop it in the chat, where about the project. Or the project's website, sorry. As I said, I'm gonna talk about memory mapping and oral history, and not just as tools, but actually as methodologies. These are ways of doing research that are relational, reflective, and deeply rooted in community knowledge. In my short little talk here, I'm going to walk us through what memory mapping is, how it connects to oral histories, the methodologies behind both, and what the actual process looks like in practice. I'll also be speaking from my work in community-based historic preservation, which is what we do here at LHC. And these methods are used not just as ways to collect information, but also to shift power and center the lived experience and humanize history. I do want to start with grounding us in something important. And it's that memory mapping and oral histories are not extractive practices. They are not about simply collecting stories from people. They are about creating space and space for reflection, agency, and storytelling on people's own terms. And as we know, in many Latinx and indigenous and historically marginalized communities, knowledge has not always been written or has not always lived in the written archives. It lives in our memories, and it lives in place, and it lives in the relationships that we make. So when we do this work, we do it thoughtfully. We're not coming it from the place of filling in gaps. We are recognizing that the archive was never really a neutral place to begin with. So with memory mapping, and I'm just going to switch my page right here to show you guys a little bit what it looks like. These are giant maps that we have in a workshop we did in Tucson. And so with memory mapping, it's a form of cultural assets mapping, just without the extra jargon. At its core, memory mapping invites participants to reflect on their life experiences through place. We ask questions like, where did you grow up? What are sites of joy? What are sites of not joy? Whatever that looks like to them. Where did important moments happen? What places no longer exist but still live in your memory? As participants share these with us, they also map them in real time. This does two really, really important things. First, it allows people to lead with memory rather than dates or official histories. And second, it visually affirms that their experiences are geographically grounded and historically meaningful, even if those places were never formally recognized. Often, memory maps reveal spaces missing from designated records, informal community sites, businesses, homes, gathering places, and routes that shaped daily life. And these are places that mattered. Whether or not the city ever marked them as historic, they live in people's memories, and so they're extremely important. And what's important here also is that memory mapping isn't just an activity. As I said before, it's actually methodology. The way we ask questions matters, the way we sit with people matters, and the way we respond matters. In our work, memory mapping is aligned with oral history practices, which means we have open-ended questions, no interruption or corrections, and no rushing towards conclusions. We position the participant not as the subject, but as the expert of their own life. And this approach reduces barriers and shifts the dynamic away from researcher versus participant and towards shared storytelling. And often, memory mapping becomes a gentle entry point, especially for people who might be intimidated by the idea of an oral history interview. From there, memory mapping creates a seamless transition into the oral history. By the time we begin the formal oral history conversation, something important has already happened. We've already built trust. We've activated their memories through the memory mapping, and participants have grounded themselves in their own narrative. The oral history interview then allows us to go deeper, where memory mapping answers where, their oral history helps us understand how, why, and what it meant. And together they create a fuller, more layered historical record. In our oral history, our methodology is that it's done ethically and it's about listening more than speaking. It requires us to slow down even when time is limited. In practice, this means allowing silence, letting people circle back, letting emotion exist without trying to fix it. We're not looking for perfect narratives. We're honoring lived experience. And it's especially important because memory mapping and oral history are often emotional work. People are revisiting places tied to migration, loss, displacement, joy, and survival. So after the memory mapping session, we always make time to sit with participants and reflect and ask how they're feeling. And this reflection is an intentional part of the methodology and not an afterthought. We also send all transcripts and media to the interviewee before we share it, and they're allowed to make any edits or changes to their interview if there's something they want to take out or something they forgot to add they want to put back in. And they also completely own the interview. If they contact us 5 years down the road and say, I don't want my interview up anymore, we take it down because it is their story to share, not ours. In practice, this is what it looks like when we're actually doing it. So our typical process might be the orientation. We explain to the interviewee what memory mapping is and what oral history is, and more importantly, also what they're not. That we're not there to extract, and that we're not there to tell their story. They're telling their story. Then we'll do a memory mapping session, and participants guide the conversation, and then we map the places together while connecting their memories. We'll stop. The third step is to stop for a reflection and pause. We check in emotionally, and we let the experience kind of settle and give them a moment if they need it before we start the interview. And in the interview, we'll expand on the themes that emerged from the mapping, and also other questions that we might have, and kind of let the conversation also flow. Sometimes questions come up during the conversation that I hadn't written down, that just kind of, as they speak, kind of, you want to know more. And then then the last thing we do is transcribe them and archive them. And these materials are preserved with consent, transparency, and community accountability. Throughout the process, participants maintain agency over what they share, how it's used, and how it's described. This is crucial. And really, it gets to the why this matters. Memory mapping and oral history humanize historic preservation. They challenge the idea that history only lives in buildings, plaques, or paperwork. They also allow us to see preservation as relational, as living, and as ongoing. And they remind us that communities are not just sources of information, they are the producers of knowledge. And when we center memory and story, we don't just document the past, we validate people's experiences in the present. And I'm just going to close with this. Memory mapping and oral history invite us to slow down, listen deeply, and consider what we value as history. They ask us to trust communities as historians of their own lives. And when we do that, the work becomes more ethical, more inclusive, and honestly, more powerful. Thank you so much for your time today. I will stop sharing there, Renee.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We'll get started with the Q&A session with our presenters. So, Monique, if you're available to come back on screen, I actually want to ask you a very quick question because I heard something today that I heard for the first time. Utah. So, like somebody from Utah is a Utah, like a Texan, like a Utah.
Yeah, and it just actually went into a hard bill this year, and it's official that we are Utahns, not Utahans.
That's incredible. I can only imagine the conversation that it took to
Yeah,
get y'all
I
there.
did, and I barely found out it even was signed into a law or whatever this year.
Cool. That's great to know. Well, I think a question for both of y'all to address Marta's question in here first, and hola Francisco, but to address Marta what she asked, who transcribes the recording, and then I guess also if there's any technical things you can recommend, like softwares or tips for the process of transcription, which can be, a big part of the work.
Yeah, it's transcribing. Oh, sorry, Jen, I started
Oh, no,
impeding.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Uh, uh, yes, so transcription is really tedious and it's really hard, and I think we found out the hard way that it is more than what we can manage. Because how we transcribe, we do use Otter AI, so we pay for a monthly service. So it's an AI service where you just upload your um, interview and it transcribes it in a few minutes. It's really easy, but even in my trainings, we always say humans are still required because it does not give you what you think, especially if you're doing different languages, but even not even if it's just we had someone who kept mentioning a city here in Utah and AI never got it right once. So um yes, so we do that. But again, it requires someone to go back and edit. And after that edit's done, we have another person second edit, so they can catch anything or maybe decipher a word that we couldn't hear. And then last, we do send it back to the narrator so they can review it and make sure things are said right and spelled right. So that's also a process. We give them about so if you do that, I don't know if anyone else has opinions on this, but always make sure to do follow-ups because sometimes when you do send it, you rarely get people who actually review it. But also too, on that note, we do it through email, which is also an accessibility issue. Maybe some people would rather do it handwritten and you have to send it through, you don't have to, but you should send it through the mail or so on. So anyways, yes, so I did mention too in the chat to Martha, we do it all on our own, but again, it's become too much for us, especially as I stepped in my new role. I'm no longer doing transcriptions or interviewing. We are looking to hire a student to help. So Otter AI, I know Whisper's a really great service as well. I see Jen nodding your
That's
head.
what
So
I use. I use Whisper because it does translanguaging a little bit better. It's not perfect, but it's a little bit better. But I do the same thing. I do that, but then I have to go through because it will sometimes have the wrong speaker or it puts someone, it's not the same person talking and it makes it all one person talking. And so you have to go through, it does require the human element. But I go through and I do that. And if it's a word is unintelligible, if I'm worried about spelling, I always highlight it. And I'm like, someone else look at this and hear it too, because I'm not catching this. Yeah, it's the exact same process. Yeah, I just use Whisper. But it's tedious. It is tedious. I'm doing one right now with 3 people talking. It was an interview with 3, and they're talking over each other. And I'm like, I've had to step away a couple times and be like, my brain hurts from listening to them all and catching it and fixing and editing. So, yeah. And our estimate, I'll just answer, I guess, Hillary's really quick. Turnaround time after recording and transcribing. We are trying to be faster because it is just me. So I would like to ideally be able to get it back to the person within 3 months. But that doesn't always happen. I think I'm at 6 months for this long one right now.
Yeah, I think it just depends for us too. I started a project in the summer, and just because of other things, like Jen, I'm also was one of the only ones doing it. And when you have other things you have to do as well, it's hard sometimes to make that the focus. For us, though, when it comes to reviewing, for them to review, as I mentioned, we give them deadlines. I don't know why, but I pick 3 weeks. So I send them an email, ask them to review it. I give them like, can you please give it back to us by this date, which is 3 weeks from when I send it. When they don't answer, if they don't answer and they won't send it back, or if they don't give it back, I do a follow-up and give them another 3 weeks. So a total 6 weeks. If they don't answer by then as well, then I send them a last email and say thank you, for taking the time to review it. We will now put this up online. And that has been okay with everyone. So I guess I just advise that if you do give them back to the narrator, make sure you give them a deadline and yourself a deadline. I learned the hard way. I gave someone 3 years because I never followed up. So that's bad on my part.
Thank you all for getting into the nuts and bolts of oral histories. There's definitely a lot that goes beyond just the interview. And Francisco, I see that you're on, so you're welcome to come on mic and ask a question for our presenters and for the rest of our guests as well.
Well, let's see. I would say a comment for Monique. Thank you, Monique. I came in late, so the only part I caught or at the start was the sugar beet industry. Yes, in what we would call Uta in Mexico, and which was part of Mexico at one time. And I think it was an indigenous tribe that were called the Utas, I believe. So when it comes to the sugar beet industry, there's a really extensive history in New Mexico. Yes, with the Neo-Mexicanos that actually migrated north, and the sugar beet industry was actually brought in by the early Americans into the territory at the late 19th century, and they actually established a lot of lime kilns because lime is an essential part of the production of the sugar, to extract it, from the sugar beet. So there's this community in Fort Worth, or was a community in Fort Worth, of Neo-Mexicanos that went up there. And actually, give me 1 second. And then they actually established a small community in Fort Collins. And according to the story or the history, is that the owner of the sugar beet plant offered them funds so that they could build their own houses. So they actually built their houses out of adobe because that was the only thing they would know how to. And they said, well, we can fabricate our own mud bricks and then build it and then still keep some of the funds instead of like the other people that were manufacturing out of frame. So one of the many stories is one that was actually recovered and made into a museum. So it's called El Museo de las Tres Culturas. And this museo, which I've assisted, not just in the condition assessment, but also in the rehabilitation, mud plastering, communication with the community. So it's a big deal in Fort Collins. There's a few other houses, but this one has been completely restored. I believe it belonged to the Familia Romero, I believe. And there's also a history of the family and how they actually, landed in Fort Collins because of the sugar beet industry. So just wanted to throw that out to you, and thank you, Monique, again for a wonderful chat.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm learning a lot about the sugar beet industry here too and how big it was. So I didn't realize it. Obviously, it makes sense that it expanded. It was in other areas too, not just Utah. Thank you. Is that museum in is Colorado? Or is
Yes.
that okay?
Yes. It's north of Denver. It's a
Thank you.
really beautiful city, and they also have I think it's CSU, I believe it's there, Colorado State University. I believe it's in CU is in Denver, but I think CSU, I believe is in Fort Collins. So because I have a
Yes.
lot of professor colleagues there as well. Mhm.
Yes. Google says you're right.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you.
Cool. That's a great connection. Thank you, Francisco. Muchas gracias. So with that, we're on the hour. I'd like to give opportunity to our speakers, chance for any closing comments. Thank you all so much for your presentation today.
Yeah, thank you again for giving me this platform and letting me share what we've done in Utah. As I mentioned, I think a lot of folks, especially me, don't realize how much how much Latino history there is here in Utah. And so even through my work at the Utah Historical Society, I'm still discovering it. And even though we have these images and these oral histories, um, research and writing still needs to be done. We have a professor at the university who has done a book on Latino history in Utah, and even he said, Armando Sorozano, that work still needs to be done. So I would love to do that. Maybe that's something in my retirement age to write the history, but I'm happy to share it with you all, and hopefully we get folks who continue to do the research. I did drop the Peoples of Utah online collection, and then I also dropped the training schedule in a PDF form. You should be able to register if you need to. Renee, I can also share those with you too, in an email later. But
Thank you.
again,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you. I
Yes.
just downloaded it right now. So
Okay.
amazing
Thank you.
resources, and I've heard great things from folks who have attended as well.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you. Yeah, a good amount of folks from the LHC newsletters have signed up, so I'm I'm glad to share this resources widely, not just with Utahns, and I'm happy that our director's also on board with that. So, thank you.
Jen, any closing words?
No, just thank you everyone for being here today. And if you have a chance to check out the Abuelas Project, please do so.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you to everybody who's been able to join today. Once again, this is being recorded. We'll get you a link with that for early access to our members later today, and it will be published on our YouTube and our LHC website for the public in 1 week to share for everybody to see. Thank you once again to our presenters, and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. Muchas gracias.